Hey guys, man, I tell ya, why would I ever play anything else when I could just play Just Cause 4? It's great. There's no consequences for dying. There's no arbitrary limitation on doing basic things like attacking. There's no taking things slow and methodical. Just constant, explosive, over-the-top, high-flying mayhem.
That noise! What is that horrible noise? I don't... No, we've been over this, no. Anything else? I'll play anything else. I'll play Dark Souls 2 before I see the inside of the Nexus again.
What's the matter? You afraid of a little Demon Souls remake?
Oh, come on, just be reasonable. We can work something out.
And this goes in here.
God damn it, just stop pointing that game at my family!
Nearly there now.
You can't make it.
Stop pretending. Deep down, you know the truth. This isn't my choice. It's yours.
Well, what do we have here? You must be a new arrival. Oh, great. Let me guess. Fate of the Gamer, right? Well, you're not the first. But yes, there's no salvation here. You'd have done better to try and platinum Kingdom Hearts 3. Yes, I've played the game. Well, since you're here, I guess I may as well help you out. Yes, I've played the game. I know the bit. We can... Come on. There are actually like a gazillion Soulslikes. Some are, as you know them to be, familiar to you. And others are far, far different. Play them all and something happens. Brilliant, right? You're kidding. It's not much to go on, but I have a feeling that won't stop you. So, off you go. It is why you came here, isn't it? To this accursed realm of the Souls-like obsessed. Fine. You know, I have way too many questions. How long have I been walking for? Why are my clothes different all of a sudden? And maybe most importantly, where the hell am I? Seems like he's gonna send me to all the worlds. Well, guess I'm gonna be stuck here. I may as well try and find my way towards Hotel Krat. Excuse me, sir, do you know how to get to... that's not a sir, and we're just... Yeah, so, as you guys can see, my masochistic side kind of took the steering wheel this summer, and he's calling the shots right now. And if there's anything that scratches the itch of that particular pain pathology, it's getting pissed off at a Soulslike at 4 a.m. Because whether I want it to be true or not, it's time for me to face facts. I really like a good Soulslike. One might even be inclined to say that I love them. When it comes to Souls games, it's a love-hate thing for me. From Demon Souls to Elden Ring, they've mostly played the same. Elden Ring is about as open world as it gets, and players and journalists alike can't seem to shut up about that one. And it's not because I can't beat them. This is footage of me I'm showing right now. playing through Fair Missoula, and it was legitimately the most miserable experience I've had playing a game since the original Nier. It was. I want to get footage of me beating all of them, so the immediate argument that Souls stands use whenever you say anything negative about them, that you're not good enough to beat them, is immediately made invalid. Awards shows are basically popularity contests. I was so bored and exhausted. Really, I was burned out on this game by the time I got to the Fire Giant, and honestly, I didn't care about finishing it. Elden Ring. Although I would argue it has far less gameplay variety and interest than Horizon, so, I mean, that's what annoys me about that fan base. They think those games are so unimpeachable and flawless, and there's such an air of elitism that they refuse to think your complaints could be anything but a lack of skill, like wearing masochism as a badge of honor. Don't give me that look. With as often as we've talked about Souls games and their imitators on this channel, you had to know I liked them to some level. But you're so critical of them. Since when does that mean that you can't also enjoy something? The idea that loving something and being critical of it are mutually exclusive has to be one of the biggest issues with discussing gaming today.
What are you talking about? In order for people to disagree with your takes, first they have to actually watch your show, which they don't.
Thank you, Inner Masochist. Love's causing me pain. Fortunately for him, all he has to do that is tell me the truth. Besides, I cherish all of you all that watch my videos, as I've said many times and will continue to say, because it's still true. So even though I was transported to the kiln of the first flame, after a trip through the Boreal Valley, it looks like I somehow wound up in Krat. And given what that pretty crestfallen looking weirdo told me, it seems like if I play all the Soulslikes I own, maybe I can get out of here and make it back to my own world. And while I'm embarking on this quest, we may as well make a show out of it, maybe even learn something new. We'll do some research into the circumstances surrounding the creation and influences of these games. We'll tackle their handling of story versus gameplay and the new mechanics and additions they bring to the table, and determine for ourselves, is there truly a king of the Soulslikes as some people claim? We'll see. So since we're stuck here in Krat, obviously I've got to start with the game that takes place here, Lies of P, which is serendipitous because Lies of P just so happens to be the closest game of all the ones we're talking about to FromSoft games in terms of gameplay and atmosphere. This is just as well, since this is probably also the most hyped game that we're going to be dealing with in the summer of Soulslikes, having built up steam and enthusiasm since May of 2021 before it released in September of last year, which additionally makes it one of the newest games that we're going to talk about as well. In this first episode, we're going to talk about its history, its influences, and the basics of the mechanical gameplay. So we'll leave the actual spoilers for next episode. So if you're someone who hasn't played it, or you have played it but you haven't beaten it yet, rest easy. We're not going to give away anything plot related until the next one. Lies of P was made by developer/publisher NeoWiz, or more specifically, one of its subsidiaries, Round 8, both of whom are headquartered in South Korea. At the time, Round 8 had only ever made one game, the fantasy MMO Bless Unleashed, which, if you haven't heard of it, you're not the only one. The reception was lukewarm and the servers were shut down in under 2 years. Sheesh. It's fair to say that most people checking for Lies of P were doing so less for Round 8's resume and more for Lies of P's dark, dramatized take on a beloved classic story, and more tantalizingly, its purported aesthetic and gameplay similarities to one of FromSoft's most beloved titles. The phrase Bloodborne successor or unofficial Bloodborne sequel is one that's been thrown around a lot, but never really delivered on. Case in point, Thymesia. As we've already seen, it wasn't like Bloodborne at all. But when that first gameplay trailer for Lies of P dropped in 2022, even skeptical gamers started to get excited, citing faster-paced action and the setting as both familiar and promising. But there was one thing we all got wrong about it. The game's director, Choi Ji-won, set the record straight about the supposed Victorian setting, explaining they were instead going for the Belle Epoque era of 19th century France, a totally different country than Victorian era aesthetic, although for most gamers the difference was inconsequential. For the ever-rabid Soulsborne fanbase, a Souls-like set in romantic Europe was close enough. It's also worth noting that this game was a labor of love for these guys. Lies of P took about 3 years for them to develop, a time frame Choi attributes at least partially to the Korean market favoring mobile games over console games. an issue the team had to circumvent by themselves, and one that Choi says is also partially responsible for how unknown NeoWiz was before this game. You might think studio size would have been more relevant, but according to Choi, manpower wasn't even on his radar. So the question of what you'd classify Lies of P as, indie, AA, AAA, is ultimately irrelevant. He goes on to call the game his crowning achievement in his 15 years in the industry. But the biggest question is the game worth it? In a word, yes. Very, very much so. Let this be a lesson. No matter how long you've been at something without experiencing the level of success you want, you never know. It could be right around the corner. Worry not. This game truly is the Bloodborne successor in so many ways. Right from the beginning, you wake up surrounded by medical equipment, beckoned by a mysterious voice to embark onwards, eventually reaching Hotel Krat, where you meet Sophia, who's obviously the Blue Fairy, who tasks you with saving your father, Geppetto.
Please find Geppetto on Elysian Boulevard.
As you cobble together disjointed information from tattered flyers and frightened survivors, you learn two things about Krat. One, this steampunk paradise's population was severely reduced when its automaton puppet servants went berserk in this mysterious event called the Puppet Frenzy. And two, to make matters worse, people are falling fatally ill to something they call the petrification disease. Astute players will notice the similarities to the beast plague ravaging Yharnam, right down to talking to people through windows.
Do you know of any safe places?
If you're a FromSoft fan, play this game for a few hours and you'll find it feels pretty familiar. Ironically, even though the main thing that made people think this game was going to be like Bloodborne was a French aesthetic people mistook for Victorian, it actually does play like Bloodborne, with some Sekiro mixed in for good measure. Offensively, you're dealing with a mostly Bloodborne-esque system. Your character, P, moves and attacks about as fast as you can in Bloodborne, with both those actions being linked to a stamina bar, but unlike Bloodborne, you can block, but P doesn't have a shield, so any block you take will deal some temporary damage that you can heal by attacking, a mechanic Bloodborne used to encourage aggression from the player. And in an extremely intelligent improvement over its predecessor, your heals, called pulse cells in this game, replenish at checkpoints like Estus would. Let me tell you, even the most hardcore Bloodborne fan is not going to try to defend having to go all the way back to Yharnam and grind for blood vials every time you run out. Not only that, but in Lies of P you can actually refill one cell at a time by attacking a certain amount. So if you play the game a certain way, you'll never really run out of heals. And given some of the endurance runs the game puts you through later on, you're going to be very grateful for that. Trust me. Now, let's look at the defensive side, which is where Sekiro influence comes in. Like we've talked about, the big thing everyone copied from Sekiro is the style of consecutive timely parries, which can be, if you want, a big part of playing this game. A lot of people will tell you that you can just go the whole game just dodging and not engage with the parrying at all, and that's true, but parries do help with staggering enemies and getting in a nice visceral. You can even break enemy weapons if you parry them enough. And besides, is a good parry sequence not just really, really satisfying? And every physical attack in the game can be parried, so if you get good at it, it can often make the difference between timely victory and stunning defeat. As you fight through the puppet-infested streets, first through City Hall, then the factory-like workshop, you'll meet a few mercenaries called Stalkers, many of whom died in the crisis. With some of them you can form an accord, but others will just attack you on sight, presumably driven insane by the events around them. And considering you're misidentified as a stalker yourself throughout the game, these are essentially our hunters. You also rescue Geppetto, your father and the creator of the puppets, and Lorenzini Vanini, a good-hearted, if pompous, inventor genius.
Oh, easy now. Don't need to kill me. Surely we can discuss this like reasonable people?
Both of whom head back to Hotel Krat, which quickly becomes your hub, where they give you helpful upgrades. Fun fact, Vanini is actually based on the character Mangiafuoco from the original story, but his name here is taken from the Steve Barron 1996 film. The name Mangiafuoco translates to Fire Eater, and the boss that you have to beat to save Vanini is appropriately called Fuoco. And guess what his power is? The longer the game goes on, the better it gets. Combat looks and feels excellent. A sentiment I heard echoed was that it was, compared to other Souls-like games, extremely polished, and there's a reason this take is so widespread. The heft and impact delay on your attacks is terrific. One thing that sets this game apart is the ability to split your weapons into a head and a handle and mix and match them to create entirely new weapons. I had my doubts about that system going in, but if you're someone like me who loves experimenting, it quickly becomes a game in and of itself. Your weapon heads dictate your attack power and elemental status, and these are what you upgrade at the smithy, while your handles dictate your attack patterns. So the more weapons you get, the more fun and interesting it becomes to tool around and build your own personalized arsenal. And because this is a weapon system entirely dependent on the player's willingness to engage with it, because you could ignore it and just use all the weapons as they are if you wanted, there's a lot of joy in finding some hidden overpowered weapon build. And those aha moments are what I play games for. Yeah, so unfortunately we gotta stop here because a few minutes ago P opened a shortcut into one of the more dangerous areas of Krat, and I really don't feel like getting beat to death by a puppet. So tune in next time and we'll get into the nitty gritty, which is going to include an assessment of difficulty, the actual story of the game, and more advanced gameplay mechanics. So stay safe, and Sophia willing, I'll see y'all next time. I'm getting the hell up out of here.